going to be a grand slam home run.
Swing and drive. Belton right. Welcome to the show.
Happy December, new week, new month on the call up here. And we are still going to be recapping a little bit from the 2023 season before the calendar flips. But of course, we wanted to get one more look back at 2023 before we get to the point where, hey, the winter meetings start really kicking off. All of a sudden we get the Rule 5 draft and we're not going to be able to look back anymore. So we wanted to talk about our biggest surprises, both positive and negative, on the player side. So individuals, Jack brought 3, I brought 3 on both ends of the spectrum. Jack, I know that we more enjoy the positive side of things, but we can't just always ignore the negative. And the negative in this is more, I was excited to see what you would do, or I thought you could do better than this. You might not be cooked, but 2023 was disappointing because I expect more. And that's it. It's not a bash party here.
Yeah, the way that I kind of viewed it was I was seeking guys that I was really excited to watch in 2023, and they kind of fell by the wayside at the end of 2023. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is not their prospect pedigree is entirely gone. We're talking about a guy that is still, I don't want to say consensus, but it is still a top 100 prospect on most outlets for one of my disappointments. But the thing about him is I was so excited to see what this guy would do at a new level at a really young age, and he was really disappointing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I viewed it. I'm excited to get into it, but happy winter meetings.
Yep.
I need you to tell me about this Phillips cat that's going from Atlanta to Seattle. And then before that, my favorite part of the winter meetings, yes, is the transactions. But I think my second favorite part is you have everybody in the same place and they're all required to do at least some form of media. So Alex Anthopoulos was on MLB Network Radio on Sirius XM on Monday morning. And he was asked about younger guys that could break through in 2024. And he said he does believe Hurston Waldrop will see Atlanta sometime in 2024.
Yeah.
Which is fun to hear. And, I think we could expect that because he did get to AAA last year. But for AA to say that on December 4th is like that shot of serotonin that I think baseball fans need.
Yeah, no doubt. It just gets you excited. It gets you feeling like, hey, it's going to be all hands on deck. And one of those situations where, especially when they're trading away some of these other depth arms, that it shows you that it's a lot of the reason why is because of the confidence they have in Waldrop. And, now they were able to move some spots, open some spots on the 40-man with arms. We talk about some of the guys that went outward, right? They trade a couple in a Schuster and we could talk about the whole
and like so many.
But the reality is like Waldrop's probably better than all of those guys, even as an unfinished product. If he gets to the big leagues next year, in some sort of relief role or spot start or short start type of capacity with Phillips. So this trade, staying on the Braves kind of topic here before we jump into it. What a wild deal. I understand it. And I think that the big part of it, and I don't know what the exact money being exchanged between the Mariners and the Braves, was. I don't think we have the exact dollar amount, but do you have the full trade breakdown? So it would have been Jared Kelenic, which is, what a roller coaster ride of from the prospect intrigue to the trade to, oh, wow, how could you ever trade him for these guys in Cano and Diaz? And then now it's, okay, we're using him as in part of a salary dump. I'm excited to see what Kelenic does in Atlanta, but I mean, they attached him to that deal to be able to unload a lefty in Marco Gonzalez, who's good when healthy, but had nerve issues and is owed $12 million. I just don't think they want to pay $12 million to see how the nerve issues kind of work out. And then also attach Evan White and that pre-arb deal that now has $8 million and then a $10 million option next year attached to it.
So it's got 7 committed this year, then 8 committed in 2025, and then club options for 10, 11, and 12.5, which are going to be declined as quick.
At a $2 million cost, because that's going to be what the buyout, I think, costs in that first year. So, I mean, they dumped a lot of money there.
They're saving 15 total in Evan White, and this year alone in 2024, 12.25 plus 7 is 19.25. They're saving nearly $20 million that they can allocate elsewhere. And Coar is on the minimum. Does Coar make the roster? I don't know. Phillips is what, AA arm?
No, so Phillips is the interesting one because he hasn't thrown yet as a pro. So what's interesting with Phillips is second round pick. Braves really excited about him. And I think this is the Mariners probably attacking it from the lens of, hey, we're not going to get a Murphy. We're not going to get a Schwellenbach. We're not going to get those kind of arms in this deal. So if we have to go a notch below, we want as much upside. And Cole Phillips was up to 99, 98, 99, 6'3", big kid out of California who had a good slider as well and really saw his stock rise. Then unfortunately had to undergo Tommy John surgery, as we see with so many guys that have that like rapid uptick from low 90s to upper 90s, just a lot of strain on the arm. So gets the Tommy John, and he was hopefully going to come back at the end of last year. There was no explanation as to why he didn't. Maybe they just could have erred on the side of caution, just turned 20 years old. So if he comes back and is healthy, this is a super high upside arm. But I think the Braves looked at it like, we prefer Schwellenbach, we prefer Murphy, we prefer Smith-Shawver, we prefer all of these other guys that are further along. We got to part with somebody. It's got to hurt a little bit. And I think they were okay with a guy that's probably 4 years away.
Well, and probably Burkhalter too. Blake Burkhalter, where they took out of Auburn. I think that was last year in the third round or something. And that guy was a Tommy John guy, but again, electric fastball. So they have a bunch of, I don't want to say middling guys, but a bunch of guys that can be swingmen types.
Yep.
I'm fascinated by what Atlanta is going to do on the trade front, because you hear these positive sentiments about Hurst and Waldrop, and you see them kind of clearing the runway. Do they go get a top flight starting pitcher, and do they part with an AJ Smith-Shawver? I hope they don't. I think Smith-Shawver can be a huge piece of what they're doing in 2024. From a Mariners perspective, I tweeted when this went down, because it was 11:30 at night when it went down. I said, I tried really hard to comprehend, but now I'm crying and my head hurts and I'm going to go to bed. And as soon as I sent that out, I saw a Heyman tweet. This makes a lot of sense for Seattle kind of clearing the runway to go make a play at Soto. And I think that makes a ton of sense, because they cleared up 20. Soto's owed about 27. They have that room now financially, and we know they have the pitching depth to go give the Padres what they need.
And they cleared up 13 with Suarez. So they're clearing the runway for something here. I'm with you, because you got the 20 there, you got the 13 with Suarez as well. You're around 30 million, depending on how much you kicked in, into this deal. Yeah. They're doing something. They're going to do something. So I'm very excited to see what that looks like. And, we talked about the Mariners aggressively depleting the farm when they went out and got Castillo, and they went out and made some of these other moves. It's already kind of replenished. This is one of the systems that, I thought strong drafting and some good IFA, pickups, and now identifying some of these pieces here and there, like a Phillips, who's going to be healthy early in this year. And, we'll see how Mako progresses and some of these other guys. I like what they've been able to do. And I like the way that they've been able to kind of reload this system. And they better reinvest the money. It's going to be tough to sell if they don't reinvest that money. On the Brave side, I like getting some pitching depth with Marco Gonzalez. If he's healthy, it's worth a flyer.
Yeah, why not?
So let's jump into these. We'll start with the disappointments, as you kind of mentioned before we started recording, and it resonated with me. I like to end with the good, right? We don't want to end with the bad. So let's start with the guys that, somewhat disappointed. I'll start with a bonus one, because we're going to go 3-3, and then we're going to switch the other way and go on the positive end. I'll start with a bonus, and we'll just talk Drew Jones real quick, because we wanted to bring guys that were unique disappointments to us. And, of course, there's going to be overlap with a lot of other people in the prospect community. But just in terms of guys that we talked about it in the open, we were just kind of more jazzed about, or at least had some strong expectations for. There's definitely a bunch of players that probably disappointed, but I just wasn't really circled on them and wasn't dialed in on them. Drew Jones, everybody was dialed in on, right? He's a number 2 overall pick in the draft. He's the son of Andrew Jones. He's had all of the hype in the world and a lot of excitement around him. He's an elite defender. He can absolutely fly. I love everything I've seen from him in terms of the way he handles himself, his interviews. He seems like a pro's pro, and it was a tough year for him. It really was. And I think it was disappointing through the lens of really not showing any signs of adjustment and improvement, because I had a pretty strong feeling that he was going to struggle, right? We talked about it from the beginning about how that swing was just going to need to adapt. That's okay. You're drafting the best athlete at number 2 with bloodlines who's shown at least the feel to put bat on ball, hand-eye wise. And you figure that's a guy, okay, I'll teach Andrew Jones' son to have a little bit more of a mechanically efficient swing. He's an 80 grade defender in the outfield, most likely by the time he's done developing. He's got the power. He's got the speed. It's all good. But he struggles out of the gate. Then you see him kind of hit the develop. I don't know if they officially put him on the development list, but he's pulled from games, right? You don't see him play in any games in low A anymore. Then he appears a little bit at the complex, and then he appears back again in low A, and the swing still looks equally brutal. It's a step in the bucket. He's totally pulling out. The path is just so short and in and out of the zone and incredibly flat. And it has to be an inside pitch that he can inside out swing because he's pulling off of it and the path is so short, or it just has to be a little flare that he catches off the end. If you look at the spray charts, he had more balls hit the other way than pull side. Like, that's a guy whose path is jacked up.
Yeah, so basketball comp here, but shoulder issue that derailed a guy's technique that got him this much hype going into everything. Markelle Fultz.
Yeah.
I was so excited for Markelle Fultz, and then he deals with a shoulder thing, and then he can't shoot. I'm like, oh, well, this is cooked. And thankfully, Fultz has carved out a little bit of a career for himself. But, we were talking about this guy is better than Tatum. He went before Jason Tatum. And, not to totally derail a basketball, but Drew Jones, I wonder how much the shoulder is affecting him in the long term. Carroll, it clearly didn't, right? And I think that a lot of people are not going to give Drew Jones the benefit of the doubt health-wise because they can point to Corbin Carroll 2 years before that and say, hey, Carroll went through the same shit, and he was a unanimous rookie of the year, and he's a top 10 player in baseball this past year. Why can't you follow that track with your Hall of Fame dad? That's so unfair. I'm rooting hard for Drew Jones. I just wonder, how comfortable he feels with this surgically repaired shoulder.
It's an important note and definitely something that I probably should have led with because, that was right at the beginning of his pro career, very similar to Corbin Carroll. I think, and again, this is mostly just speculation. I don't know. I'm sure that it had some sort of adverse effect. That had that lead shoulder, it gets stiff, it's just hard. But Carroll had a good swing, right? So those inefficiencies that may come from stiffness and a little bit of a shoulder issue, I think could be exacerbated when you don't have a great swing. So I think those hiccups in the swing mechanics, only got worse when he dealt with that shoulder issue. And I think it exposed it a little bit further. So regardless, he's going to need to clean up that swing. I'm sure he's been working hard on it in the offseason. I think he could still become a star player and be a very good player, but it was a disappointment and there's no way around that. That's the bonus guy. Then we'll jump into now each of our three. And again, there's going to be so many different players. If there's someone that on the positive side or the negative side stood out to you, please feel free to comment on the YouTube side and let us know, who you thought, stood out on one end of the spectrum or the other, or tweet at us, at ArmWaitNate, at Jack McMullen, or, on the Call-Ups Twitter. Jack, I'll give it to you for, the guys that disappointed. You went with two pitchers and a hitter, all kind of different areas of different divisions, different areas of the country, different types of players. It's a fun mix. Unfortunately, not fun to talk about, but right. I think important players to hit on because I think two of them were expected last year to potentially be able to contribute to their big league rotation. And the third was expected to become arguably the best catching prospect in baseball. Obviously, we're talking about them in the front half of this episode, so none of that happened.
Yes. I want to start hot out of the gate, and I've already alluded to him, but Diego Cartaya is my first disappointment this year. I was so excited for what Cartaya was going to do, and he was a step higher on the ladder than Dalton Rushing was coming into this year. Rushing was going to be the guy in high A because Cartaya needed everyday reps behind the dish in double A. I was so amped because Cartaya was sharing a roster. I think we ID'd Tulsa with that starting rotation. Like he was catching Sheehan and Frasso and Nastrini and Hurt and Knack. Like he was catching everybody in Tulsa. And then offensively, You had him, you had Vivas, you had Eddie Leonard, you had Andy Pages. Like, so many guys were just stocked in Tulsa, and Cartaya was the best name. He was a consensus top 20 prospect in baseball coming into the year. And Diego Cartaya this year played 93 games in Double-A in his age 21 season. Hit a .189 with a 656 OPS. He had 19 homers, 57 driven in, but he punched out 117 times in 400 plate appearance. So it was a high 20% K rate. He hit under 190. The OBP was under 300. It was a year from hell for him. And I frankly was not expecting that. I was expecting him to frankly hammer Double-A pitching, and we didn't get that at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you said consensus. I think a lot of people had him as like one of the top overall catchers in the minor leagues, and for good reason. Like, there's a lot to like.
Alvarez and Cartaya coming into the year. Those were one.
Did we have him in the top 20? Because I remember being pretty worried about him.
I thought we did have
him. But we had him up there. I can promise you we had him higher than we have him now. I can guarantee that. But there was definitely some red flags going into 23, but at the same time, like, the guy hit 22 pumps the year before in 98 games overall, slashed 250, 382, 491. Yeah, I mean, this guy was a consensus top 20, top 30 prospect. I mean, he did that in his age 20 season, and did that while looking pretty good behind the dish. What's crazy is you mentioned these numbers, dude. What stands out to me is the EVs drop. I mean, his 90th percentile drops by like a full tick. And you look at the swing, you look at bats. This guy was selling out to the pull side, just trying to yank fastballs. And he got them. Like, you would see him hit some of those fastballs. I think 9 of his 19 home runs came on four seamers. But I just felt like he was so exposed. And anytime you spun something, he just really didn't have a chance. Guy hit a .170 against sliders. He hit even worse than that against changeups. Can you believe 120 against changeups? I just don't know how one of the best prospects in baseball can get to that point. To me, it looked like he was trying to be Isaac Paredes when you don't have the ability to do that in terms of the bat to ball. Because again, you look at the pull side, you look at what he's trying to do. Like, the EVs, I thought, have never been there to the degree that a lot of people give him credit for. Like, he had some good power output at the lower levels and good environments and things like that. And he looks the part. He's one of those guys where it looks like he probably hit it a little harder than he did. But this was never a 70 power guy. This was never a guy that had elite juice. He is someone that needs to kind of get into it in the air and sometimes pull the ball. And that's why last year, I mean, we saw him a ground ball rate of only 33%. Like, this guy was trying to hit the ball in the air all the freaking time, but that's going to result in a low BABIP if you're not, making solid contact, which hit a 214 BABIP, and result, it's going to also give you probably a limited output in terms of just your hits and your overall numbers, and that's where he finished.
It's crazy to me that you say that the EVs went down when he was selling out more, and he's trying to go get fastballs. Shouldn't the 90th percentile EV jump? Like, that should be the only thing that improves if you're selling out for pull side juice. So that is, I mean, that's concern number one. It's like, all right, you're trying to lean into this power hitting catcher thing. You're trying to be, the elevated Mike Zunino. Shouldn't the EVs be elite? And they're not. A 214 BABIP is hard to wrap my brain around.
Yeah.
That's really hard to comprehend.
And launch angle of 25 degrees. Like,
dude, that's infield fly city, man.
Yeah. So he was at 20 degrees, 21 degrees the year before. Like, that's top, that's kind of as high as you want. You can get in the low 20s, if again, you got to really hit the ball hard. So to get to the 25 degree area, like, that's tough, man.
Average launch on homers is what, like 17 degrees?
Around there, yeah.
Yeah.
And like, line drives are going to be between 10 and 20. If you're living between 10 and 20, you're hitting 700, right? Like, balls that are hit between those degrees are generally like, the highest BABIP types of batted balls. So definitely a frustrating year, and just not a lot of line drives, period. It just seemed like you mentioned, pop-ups or weak fly balls, and just not a lot of in between. When he catches them, but even the max exit velocities, I don't think were up to par with, what people maybe give him credit for power wise. Max of 109 last year. Like that's fine.
But it's not good enough for a
No.
6'3", tank of a catcher.
And then, depending on who you ask, a lot of evaluators feel like he's gotten a little stiff behind the dish, that, he's kind of thickened out. So even more so, you'd expect to see more from the power department. So this is a big year for him coming up, because I am very concerned. There were the red flags at the end of 2022, but still a really good season that kept him as one of the best prospects in baseball at his position. But there were some, I would say yellow flags. And then now you get a bunch of red flags at the upper levels. Yes, he's young, but if it doesn't happen for him next year, he's going to start falling like a rock if he isn't already.
Yeah.
Next guy for you?
Next guy for me is Caleb Killian with the Chicago Cubs. It was really hard to watch him, considering where I think the consensus was at in 2022, especially at the beginning of 2022. Everybody was amped for Killian coming into the 22 season. And the Chris Bryant trade arc is fascinating to me, because we were kind of living it in real time. And me as a Chicago native, I was like, wow, that's really sad. Chris Bryant was the guy that brought that fan base in my hometown a World Series championship for the first time in 108 years. The return was Canario and Killian. And at the beginning, it was, okay, Canario's the headliner, but Killian's had a pretty solid year. He had an excellent finish to 2021 after the trade. He led minor league baseball in strikeout to walk ratio. It was ridiculous. 2021, between high A and double A, 112 punch outs, 13 walks. So coming into 22, it was like, all right, this guy's going to, start the season in triple A. He's going to look good for 5 starts, and then he's going to be part of the Cubs rotation in 22. That wasn't the case. He had an ERA in the low to mid 4s in triple A in 2022. In 23, I was like, all right, I watched this guy hit 99 miles an hour last year. 2023, I watched him hit 99 again. How does 99 result in a mid 4s again? And how does the K rate drop like this? And how does the command dissipate like this? It felt like he was getting tattooed because he was leaving 99 over the heart of the plate. And it did feel like he was a bit timid at times. The location was odd for me. And every pitch was just kind of blending, and they were all either over the heart of the plate or they were missing badly. He was a really tough watch for me as somebody that is a pitching junkie that was really rooting for that guy to be a consistent piece in the Cubs rotation.
Dude, you talk about everybody being excited about him. I think I had him ranked as one of the best, if not the best arm in the system at one point. I know that was more of an indictment on the system, but I was really excited about Killian. The way he finished that 2021 season. It was the 2021 stretch right at the end, like you mentioned, where he was just lights out.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah. So comparing the data, it's very interesting. To me, it kind of looks like a guy that's tinkered and just gotten so far away from where he was and where it worked. So you look at I guess just kind of the first of all, the release data and just like that side of things. 2021, he had a release height just a smidge below 6 feet, but was getting extension of 6'8". So for reference, MLB average is like 6'3", roughly on the extension side. So above average extension there. And that's going to help the fastball play up a little bit. And then again, a slightly lower release point. Then in 2022, that extension drops to 6.3, 6.4. And his release height jumps a little bit too. So those are two things that you don't want for a 4-seam fastball. And then by 2023, the extension, he gains a little bit again, but the release height now jumps all the way to 6'3", 6'2", 6'3". At a 6'2", I should say, actually, it's closer to that. 6'2" release height, you're almost at that point better off throwing either sinkers, or you better have a fastball that's like Justin Verlander's with 19, 20 inches of vert from that high of a release point. He has about 15 inches of vert. So he's gotten to this higher release point, still is diminished in terms of extension from where he was before, and the fastball still has the same shape. So I don't know what the best course of action is. I don't know if it's starting to adapt to sinker. And, they actually kind of did that a little bit more with him. Like he
Yeah.
started to lean into that a little bit more, but I don't know if he has that sinker action. Like I don't know if he's able to generate that. So I feel like he's you talked about not having the confidence. I see a guy that's like in a tweener spot with his fastball and can't really get back to where he once was. And the characteristics are just very hittable. I think it's a very easy to see fastball. So I think the best course of action for him at this point is trying to find a sinker that works for you, a two-seamer sinker type, and be a ground ball guy. Because I just don't think he's going to get back to low release, good extension, 99, which even then, like that, there was some shape and characteristic things that were a bit different that probably wouldn't have played great at the highest level.
So there were things that made me think this guy is timid, and he may be the most confident person in the world. I have no idea, but just from watching full starts several times over the last 2 years, it seems like every time I called a guy like this guy's start, it was a different arsenal and it was different usage every time. It felt like he was constantly tankering. So I think that's why I say that it seems like he lacked confidence. I hope that he figures out an arsenal that works for him, but I'm telling you, he's got 5 pitches. I have no idea which one we're going to see the most.
Well,
and the rubber.
Yeah, I was gonna say the last thing, I think you mentioned it there, is the breaking balls just weren't good for him. You talk about them blending together, they absolutely do. And then on top of that, like last 15 starts of the season, which would be that range of which you saw him a couple times. Curveball was fine, but didn't get a lot of chase, 18% chase rate. And moving on to the slider, though, he only landed that slider, which he mixed in about 15% of the time, for a strike at a 43% clip. Chase rate of 12%, swinging strike rate of 9%. That's a legitimately bad pitch. That's like a don't even bother until you fix something with that pitch kind of offering. So that side of it's really interesting too. Like 43% strike rate on the slider. Cutter's strike rate was not great, and he started to phase that out a little bit, and the changeup just wasn't there for him. So he was really 4-seam, sinker, curveball. That's tough when the fastballs aren't playing that well either.
Yeah. My last disappointing guy is a Minnesota Twin, Simeon Woods Richardson. And maybe this is an indictment on me, but I have such a soft spot for the fastball changeup guys. I think that there is a place in baseball for fastball changeup, especially when you do have a 12-6 kind of hammer curve. But I'm asking you the question, what the hell happened this year? Because he's a guy that I think, is prospect fatigue a thing with Simeon Woods Richardson? He's been around for a long time.
I think if you were a guy that was relatively considered a top 100 guy, and he was always hovering around that, definitely a top 150 guy, and then you're included in a big trade, and then you're one of the better pitching prospects in your next system, I absolutely think you could be a prospect fatigue guy, just not with the same allure as some of the other guys, or for lack of a better word.
He was part of several big trades. He was part of the return for Marcus Stroman from New York to Toronto.
Then of course. Then he's definitely a prospect fatigue guy.
So it was Stroman and then it was Barrios. So it's like, we're relying on Simeon Woods Richardson. And then Toronto moves into Minnesota, and Minnesota is saying, we're relying on Simeon Woods Richardson. I thought that he was going to be the 5 for Minnesota this year. I didn't think that Ober was going to take that over. Ober thrived in that role. SWR put out a 5 ERA this year. And just the difference between 22 and 23. For the most part, he spent 2/3 of the year in AA in 22. He made 7 starts in AAA. This guy had a 2.7 ERA in 22 starts between AA and AAA in 2022. He was punching out 9.5 per 9. He was walking 3. Where did those go? This year, 113 innings. He had a 4.9 ERA. He had a whip at 1.5 after a 1.0 whip last year. He was punching out 7.5 per 9. He was walking 5 per 9. So honest to God, I'm asking you, what the hell happened?
He lost a tick on the fastball.
Yeah.
That's phase 1. Phase 2. So imagine you lose a tick. That already, that's a classic thing that we'll see. Obviously, numbers are going to get worse. And then he had a lot of those underlying, pitch characteristics adjust too. So imagine you lose a tick, you start releasing it from 0.2 feet higher, and you lose some extension. You get a fastball that got hit to the tune of, what do we get here?
Over 300
OPS. Yeah. 295 batting average against.
Yeah.
So that's one side of it. And then the other side of it, dude, is, I mean, what I loved about Woods Richardson, I think why you loved him, because this is like, I know your soft spot is also just like pitchability guys. You just like guys that can finesse and, hit their spots and do those different things, especially from a broadcaster's perspective. When you're calling those games, I'm sure it's way more enjoyable when a guy's cruising and hitting his spots and whatever. But that's also just been, I think, a type of player that you've always enjoyed. And Woods Richardson was exactly that. I mean, I remember talking to a couple of guys that faced him in 22, and they were saying, yeah, it was kind of annoying. Like, you didn't feel like you were overmatched or anything like that. You felt like you could try to be on it, but everything was moving in a different direction. And it was just really hard to get your best swing off. And I think this past year, you could kind of eliminate things. Like the slider, he was only landing that for a strike around 55% of the time. Curveball, he was landing for a strike around 50% of the time. So the changeup's good, but okay, I'm banging both of those curveballs. All right, land those. And even if you land it, it might not be good enough for me to, whiff. I might still be able to spoil that. So I think hitters were really eliminating spin, and they were sitting subdued fastball down a tick from where it was previously, or a good changeup. So make him bring it up from a higher release point. It's a lot easier to do. And that's why Woods Richardson, I think, had the year that he had.
That stinks. Do you think there's a bounce back in here? Does it stem from fastball velocity?
I think there is. I think it's a little bit of like mechanics. I think he lost something in the delivery, and then I think he was just trying to find it. I think it's there. I mean, the fastball, like the data in 22, dude, he was getting a 25% in zone whiff. He was getting chase rate almost at 30%. I know it wasn't the same level of competition, but he was still doing that in the upper levels. I think it can be in there. He just turned 23. He's got to find the spin. Like we talk about the supinators, pronators. He's definitely a supinator. He's definitely a pronator. He's got to find the supination, be able to spin something a little bit better. And maybe he can change the grip, change the way he throws his breaking ball, but he needs that.
Yeah.
Last guy for you.
That was it. Those are my
That was it. That was 3. All right. Now it's my turn.
It's your turn, man. Who are your 3 disappointments?
Yeah. So I was trying to figure out which way to go in terms of like, there could be guys that I was super excited about going into this year and then, just fell flat, like we mentioned, or it could be a guy that I was like, it can't be worse than last year. And then it somehow was. And I want to start with that guy. So Cole Winn. I know that people probably weren't expecting a ton out of Cole Winn. And 2022 was probably Cole Winn's disappointing year, right? Like, that's where people are talking about him, the Texas Rangers prospect, as the disappointing guy. But that said, he was disappointing for me because I didn't think it could get worse. Like, can you kind of lay out the numbers in 2021, the numbers in 2022, and then the numbers in 2023? Like 21, he was looking like one of the most well-rounded pitching prospects in the game. Then 22, he falls flat on his face, battled some injuries, battled other things, whatever. Even though I think everybody was, kind of moving off of him in terms of where he once was, I still was holding out hope that he could turn into this back end of the rotation starter, rediscover some of those things in his age 22-23 season. He was worse last year.
Yeah, that video of the volleyball player like getting a spike right to the face, and then she's laying on the ground and she gets another spike to the face. Like that's kind of what this 23 season was for Cole Winn. So for perspective, 2021, 86 innings, Winn had a 2.4 ERA, 11 Ks per 9, 3 walks per 9. 2022, 121 innings, so he upped it big time, but a 6.5 ERA, Ks per 9 dropped by 2, walks per 9 doubled to 6 walks per 9. What happens in 23? 101 innings, ERA goes up 3/4 of a run to 7.22 in 101 innings. That's a large sample. 8.5 Ks per 9, so that's down from a bad 2022. And 7 walks per 9. 101 innings, 79 walks issued. How does that happen? Twice.
Do you remember people were telling us in our replies, I think it was Rangers fans, saying that he took a ball off the shin in 22, and that's why like things weren't going right and whatever. Like, I mean,
that shin's still barking, man. What's going on?
I really feel for him. I really do, because he was on a fast track. Like it seemed, and it wasn't just that Cole Winn was putting up the numbers that you mentioned in 2021, he was doing it with like a mixture of 3 potential big league pitches and just a rhythm. And I know the command wasn't perfect, but there's just a rhythm to what he was doing. And you just felt like he could fill up the zone, at least, through spurts with several different offerings. The fastball was averaging 19 inches of vert, in 21. And I think that was something that stood out too, right? He was really spinning the baseball. And look, I think there's more to it than the crackdown on sticky and stuff like that. But it is worth noting that, from 21 to 22, he loses 2.5 inches of vert. He loses, over 100 RPM. But it is also worth noting that he, through some of the struggles, totally changed his delivery, and some of those things, may have impacted him as well. But just to lose the command the way he has, I mean, do you think it's almost like a version of the yips, right? Where he's like now just made some adjustments to try to get back to 2021. And similar to what we were talking about with before, is like now he's just so far gone that he almost needs to go back to square one.
If I were to guess, it would be a combination of that and being terrified of PCL hitting.
Yeah.
And I like at some point he needs to, come to the conclusion that he can't be terrified anymore. If he wants to be a big league pitcher, you can't be scared of the environment that you're pitching in.
Well, what's interesting too is you mentioned that, and you mentioned like maybe it being less about command in terms of, I'm incapable of throwing strikes, and more about, being timid. He's thrown his last 3 starts. He's throwing in the winter league right now. His last 3 starts have been really good. 4 innings, 2 walks, no runs, 4 Ks, 5 innings, 1 run, 1 walk, 5 Ks, 5 innings, 1 run, 2 walks, 7 Ks. I mean, 2-1-2 in the walk department, and turning over lineups and filling up the zone and only giving up 7 hits. I know it's not AAA competition, but he's not playing, bums either. And the way he was throwing last year, that wasn't playing in AA either. That wasn't playing maybe anywhere, the way he was throwing. So there are some encouraging signs given what he's been able to do over the last, few starts. And it's rare to see a player that even once had wins pedigree as a pitcher ever go to the winter league. Like, they don't waste bullets there. And that's where it is at for him. He was landing his fastball for a strike like 50% of the time. Like, I think it was largely mental. And I think that's why they sent him there. And maybe this is the confidence he needs. He really disappointed me, but I'm still going to hold out a sliver of hope going into 24. I think I am.
So, who I saw turn over a lineup a couple times, and I think it was 5 no-hit innings, or might have been 6 innings of 1-hit ball, was Daniel Lynch. And like, that's
kind of the same thing.
It's kind of the same thing. I know. Maybe these guys just need that quick change of scenery, and they haven't had the change of scenery when it comes to trades or minor league free agent deals. But I think if Texas can look to move this guy, that might be the best thing for Cole Winn. Like, I do think that this is a change of scenery candidate number 1 in that organization.
No doubt. And I hope he does get moved, because they've got other guys that are battling through some things too, like Owen White. I think I'd rather give the time to Owen White. Obviously, Jack Leiter, like, he's got a lot more going for him. I could see Winn kind of being that odd man out, and maybe regain a little bit of stock with the way he's thrown in winter ball. Like, a team could see that and say, hey, might be worth a flyer for us here, and see if we can unlock something out of the newly turned 24-year-old. Next guy for me is a little bit on the other end of more kind of considered a top 100 prospect, depending on who you ask before this year, and included in a big trade. Jose Salas traded over from the Marlins to the Twins, and he was in that Luis Arias, Pablo Lopez deal. And it's funny because, Marlins, I think just the general consensus was, why did the Marlins have to attach arguably their best prospect to such a deal? And also I think the consensus was Marlins got fleeced. In a way, like in a vacuum, like Lopez is definitely more valuable because of what he's done. But I mean, Arias at 350, so it worked out. The fact that the Marlins had to attach a prospect to that was a very big topic of conversation. I also attached Brian Chorio. But Salas, switch hitter, obviously older brother of Ethan Salas, the wonderkin catching prospect. It was a rough year. And this was another guy, struggles at the lower levels, gets put on the dev list, again, goes and hits at the complex, then comes back at the end of the year. You have the numbers in front of you. Also another guy that's playing in the winter league right now and also struggling.
Yeah.
What do the Salas numbers look like from 2023?
2023, 95 games, 93 of which in high A Cedar Rapids, hit a $188 with a 263 OBP. He slugged 268. So that's a 531 OPS, punched out 99 times in under 400 plate appearances. So high 20% K rate, hit under 200, slugged under 270. This is a year from hell. And he's getting on base at a 230 clip in the Venezuelan Winter League. Granted, he's 8 years younger than the average hitter, but he was there when he was 17 years old. And, you would think after several years of pro ball, you could up the OPS from 412 when you're a 17-year-old past 471 when you're a 20-year-old. But that's just not happening right now for him.
Preseason, I think top 100 guy by Prospectus, who we're usually on, the same page with a lot of our rankings. Yeah. And I know Fangraphs had him very high. A lot of people were like, how could this guy be moved here? And I think that's part of the reason why it was a big disappointment. I've obviously been watching Salas since the backfields down here in South Florida, when I go spring training time in Jupiter. Really nice field to hit from both sides of the plate. And you looked at him, you're like, okay, he might not stick it short, but he could continue to fill out and turn into this impactful bat, and balance maybe above average hit, above average power. There wasn't a ton of whiff last year. I mean, the contact rates were fine, but the ball didn't go anywhere. The exit velocities weren't good. The quality of contact was not good. And the approach is just kind of iffy. And you get that year from hell. So Salas with the Twins, definitely a disappointment, still just 20 years old, but it seems like he's kind of lost with how they handled him this year with the dev list, complex, all that stuff. Seems like they're kind of trying whatever they can at this point.
It's clearly, I think we looked at this deal as mutually beneficial as soon as it happened. I think if Salas had a breakout year, we'd be looking at this as a massive Twins win, but I think we're going to continue to look at this as, one of those very even deals. And it may go through several like iterations, I guess. I do think that Diamondbacks Blue Jays Varsho trade is going to go down as even though right now it looks like Arizona's winning it. I think Varsho's really good, man. I think he's due for a bounce back, but I do think that we're looking at this trade 2 years from now as very even because Salas,
the prospects don't separate it. Exactly. Last but not least, Mason Hour, Rays. It's a guy I was just so amped on. If you listen to the show for a while, like I was gassing Mason Hour up. So if you own fantasy shares or something like that, I mean, I'm sorry. I was very excited about this guy. I mean, just tools galore in the outfield. And again, I saw him in the Arizona Fall League, and he looked really good there. And I watched him take BP, and I talked to him, and I was just very impressed by the way he went about his business. I still think Auer can be good. He's 22 years old. He was a JUCO guy, and it was a big leap to AA with the tack ball and all that good stuff. And, contact was never going to be, the forefront of his game. I kind of talked about him like this, kind of poor man's Tyler O'Neill to a degree. And now it's maybe just Tyler O'Neill. But yeah. I was so shocked at the struggles, man. You look at the numbers in AA. I mean, 204 with a 630 OPS. I thought that you'd have the speed, power combination. He was walking a little bit at points last year. I thought at least, he'd be able to put together a decent slash line, but it just wasn't a great year for him at all.
So in terms of AA hitters, I've got some complex guys here that punched out at like a 45% clip, so I'm sifting them out. Mason Auer. Let's look at K rate. Auer was fourth in AA baseball in K rate. He punched at a 36% clip. K Bunnell with Atlanta punched at a 38% clip. Landon Stevens with Atlanta punched at a 37% clip. But then you had Aaron Zavala in Texas, who was a disappointment as well. And then you have Auer at 4. James Wood, by the way, at 6 with a 34% clip rate. But Auer was one of those guys that, I think you were expecting to see in that area, but you were expecting him to have a better WRC plus than 72.
Yeah, you're expecting to pallet the 30% or 25-30% K rate with 10-11% walk rate, 20 homers, 20 bags, and you're like, all right, this is fun and chaotic. Like that's what we're looking forward to. I will say he finished the season strong. And over the last 25 games had an 809 OPS, but also still struck out 35% of the time. So the end zone whiff is really concerning. I mean, 69% zone contact rate is going to be tough to survive with. And I just was not expecting that degree of whiff. Zavala also, you mentioned, a disappointment, a guy that I was excited about that just really fell flat this year as well.
Yeah, I'm going to throw one more in too. I'm just looking at the AA leaders right now in ground ball rate. Robert Hassel was
the other name I was going to talk about it. It just makes me too sad.
Yeah, I know. He was bottom 15, I guess, in K rate, and he was bottom 3 in ground ball rate in AA. Like that's tough.
I mean, if you see his swing, dude, I just saw him in the NFL again too. I mean, open side, you're there, like just everything's forward, just lunging forward. It's just so hard to get a swing off like that. So yeah, I mean, Hassel and Zavala easily could have been, in this conversation too, but we wanted to kind of go a little bit outside of the obvious. Flipping to the positive side of things, we're going to talk about some of the most exciting and I think most of the pleasant surprises from the 2023 season. All right, so hitting on the positive side of things here for the second half of the episode, and this is a lot more fun. We just get to talk about players who pleasantly surprised us. Yes. Jack, floor is yours. I know you have a few names that I think it's worth noting. We're going to have some first round guys in here because most first round picks don't actually work out, but also because it's relative to what our expectations were. And they had insane years, relative to even those expectations. I'm sure you could highlight, somebody that was drafted in the 12th round and whatever, but we didn't even have that much of an expectation for them. Right. Like, to just give it away, but just to make my point, like a Brady House, top pick, people had crazy high expectations. I began to get a little bit skeptical, and then he met a lot of those crazy high expectations in a bounce back year. That's a pleasant surprise. So maybe we lead with that.
Let's start with House. Yeah, because I don't think it was a breakout. That's my thing here. We've already talked about breakouts. And while this could be considered the first good year in professional baseball for Brady House, it's not a breakout because we expected this. We didn't get it. And now he achieved our expectations and, maybe surpassed them a little bit. They were veered off, I think, a teensy bit in 2022, and he was dealing with injuries in 2022. He only played 45 games in low A last year, and he had a 731 OPS. So what does he do this year? He doubles his game output. He played 88 games, and he hit 312 with a slug just under 500. He OPS'd 860 between 36 games in low A, 16 games in high A, and then a month and a half, 2 months in double A as well. And in double A, this guy put together maybe his best spot. He had 324 with an 840 OPS. And man, the walks weren't there in double A. But he kept the punch outs in check, relatively speaking, and he flashed a bunch of power. Mm-hmm. I was really impressed with this version of Brady House that we saw this year.
No doubt. And I think the big key is he's healthy. Because the looks I got at Brady House were, I guess, injured looks. And that's the thing is you don't know what's going on. We talked about that with Robert Hassel, and now he's healthy and he's still struggling. So it's tough, right? It's really tough. But when you see a guy that definitely was going through injury issues, is healthy, and then performs like this, it's very easy to chalk it up to the health. And then when you look at the underlying data, we only had a 45 game sample last year of House, but a 90th percentile of 101. Just struggling to get the ball in the air, which is something that he still needs to do a little bit more, but just really struggling to get the ball in the air. And you think about it, it's that's not the Brady House that we saw out of high school, and that's not the Brady House that is 6'3", 220. So obviously dealing with some different ailments, and I think that very much impacted his ability to hit. But that on top of that, even his profile, injuries aside, even if he had a solid year last year, if you told me that he'd get up to double A and actually do well and not get blown up and strike out a lot in his age 19 season, I don't know if I would have believed that. So he's a surprise on that front too. The fact that he was able to climb those levels and succeed, as you mentioned, in double A is remarkable. And I think he's far from a finished product because you mentioned the walks. I mean, he's still chasing at a 37% clip. He's still swinging at 54% mark. He's still swinging way too much, but the power was there. The contact ability was there. He got the ball in the air far more, only a 46% ground ball rate, and a 90th percentile 107, Jack. He hit a ball 113 miles an hour. He literally just is showing us, hey, I've got juice. I just wasn't right last year. Check it out. And he has way more power in the tank. That's the thing. is once he can, the swing's flat, and I think that helped him make more contact. But once he can kind of generate a little bit more lift and be able to also make some better swing decisions, this guy could be an absolute force.
This isn't the year. 2024 isn't the year, you don't think, right? I think 25 is the year where we see everybody come up. Cruz will be up in 2024, and Dylan Cruz will play center field. I think this is probably the end of the line for Victor Robles as the everyday center fielder. But 25, I do think you get your first taste of James Wood and your first taste of Brady House playing third base every day. And I think that's when I can really buy into the product that Washington Nationals baseball is going to be again. And I think that they're well positioned for 2025.
I'm 100% with you. I think it's going to be really fun. I mean, there's a legit chance at a September call up if they want to. But I'm with you. I think 2025 is the spot where we're going to see this core really come together and be fun. And I just hope Hassel can join them.
Right.
But we'll see. But if he was on his track that we thought he once would be on, man, this would be a really fun, young core, but it already is still a very exciting young group they got there. Next guy.
Justin Crawford, another first round pick. And we had some dialogue before we started recording about Justin Crawford. It's like, are you sure he was a surprise? And I said, well, I mean, did you expect him to hit 330 in 87 games in his age 19 season? Like, he didn't spend any time at the complex this year.
Yeah, that part is remarkable.
Yeah, so 16 games. He was really underwhelming at the complex out of his draft year in 2022. But in 2023, 87 games. Most part in low A, 69 of the 87 in low A. He played 18 games in high A. And this guy, as a whole, slashed 332, 392, 467 with 47 bags. And he only punched 69 times in 400 plate appearances. So he kept the K rate in check. He stole a shit ton of bags. He had 8 triples in 87 games. And I was stunned at the slug number. It didn't come from homers. That slug number is not going to be high. But if this guy just accumulates doubles and triples with that game-changing speed, I really feel good about who this guy can become. Because as a 19-year-old, this was way better than what I was expecting in low and high A.
Oh, definitely. Especially when I looked at the swing. I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be interesting. He's a project, right? Bloodlines, though, he's 6'3", 175. You can dream on the projection. You can go get it in center field too. And he impressed when we watched it. Kind of just came back to me as you were breaking that down. He looked really good when we saw him in the Futures game. And I know that's a short spurt, but he had some comfortable ABs. I was very surprised because, again, the swing's a work in progress in terms of getting it to a place where it's going to translate at the big league level. But the way that he was kind of able to command his at-bats, the way he's able to kind of feel the barrel was impressive. And I think that's why he was able to hit 330, as you mentioned, in low A, because put bat on ball, run fast. And he did that. But he also made really good swing decisions for the most part, and I thought was able to kind of hold his own. My concern is that he put the ball on the ground 70% of the time. And that's legitimately unsustainable. However, You alluded to the power and that there was just more there than people you may have thought. And I'm with you. That's the part that stands out the most to me. And that's why I'm excited about Crawford if it can come together hit tool wise, because he's 6'3" with that projection. And yet he slugged a little bit, some because of the speed, some because of the defense sucked and that he's playing against, but also because he hit the ball hard in the gaps. Like he squared balls up. He was not a slap hitter. He had a 90th of 103. He flashed 109s, plenty of 105s, 106s, 107s. With his speed, that's more than fine. And he's going to get stronger. And he was a young 19 at the start of the year. He had just turned 19. So I think he's absolutely a surprise from the lens of how he performed. I am skeptical if this is going to translate in high A, and it might be a little bit of a work in progress from there. But I think to your point, his starting point is elevated from where we thought it was going to be. I think we thought that there was going to be more fighting through it and just fighting to put up good numbers in full season ball right away. And he did that. So now it's, can you get the ball in the air and can you try to match this production against better pitching? That's ahead of where we thought they were going to be with him.
Yeah. And, kind of speaking to your point, like you said it before we started recording, we can't ding him for what hasn't happened yet.
Exactly.
We can't, judge this guy. For me, I think doing that is very similar to discrediting a guy because of a high BABIP. I heard it year after year with Tim Anderson. And I don't think that's what came back to haunt Tim Anderson.
Yeah, 5 years later, the BABIP caught you like now.
Oh man, it kicked in officially. Just kind of ridiculous to me. Like at some point, the results need to speak for themselves. And I thought the results for a 19-year-old in low and high A were amazing.
No doubt.
Speaking of results, my last guy, stay with me for this. Justin Henry Malloy is the new king of the walk. And he's going to be not Greek, but he's going to be a god of walks when he does get his big league chance. I'm going to walk you through pretty much every level since he graduated high school. He redshirted at Vandy. College Summer League, 23 games after his redshirt freshman year, hit 267 with a 440 OBP. Redshirt freshman year at Vandy was 1 for 15, so hit 067, but had a 364 OBP. Summer League after that, 324 with a 523 OBP. Sophomore year at Vandy, 167, a 487 OBP. Then he goes to Georgia Tech, 308, a 436 OBP. Gets drafted, 2021 in low A, 271, a 388 OBP. 2022, high A, double A, triple A with a trade, 289, 408 OBP. Goes to the Fall League, where I know you saw him in Scottsdale last year, 306, a 438 OBP. And then this year hits 277 in 135 games as a 23-year-old in AAA, 277 with a 417 OBP. If you combine every single stop that this guy has made since he graduated high school, his on-base percentage is 426. That's incredible.
That is incredible.
And the fact that he tapped into power, had 23 homers this year, walked 110 times in 135 games, and showed decently at third base, right field, and a lot of left field. He's a part of the Tigers' 2024 plans.
Yeah.
And we weren't expecting that.
No, not at all. So that's what I was going to ask you. I said, okay, you've got the track record of walks. What was the surprise for you this year? Was it the versatility? Was it the power? Was it a little bit of everything? Was it the fact that he's just still doing it in AAA? Like, what was the surprise?
So that was a long way for me to walk through kind of the thought process for me. It's like, this motherfucker's doing it again in AAA over a whole year. The power output was impressive. 23 is the most he's had at any stop. He had 17 last year in similar number of plate appearances. We upped that by 6. For me, it was handling AAA across a full season the way he did. And we can talk about International League pitching taking a dip all you want. AAA pitching in general, taking a dip all you want. Don't care. With a 23-year-old that showed a solid glove at the hot corner and in the corner outfield spots, if I'm getting the threat of 20 homers, I know that this guy is going to debut and have a 380 on base percentage in the big leagues. He can play left, he can play right, he can play third. I don't think they need him to play third, but I think you stash this guy in left field, he's going to be an everyday hitter for the Detroit Tigers for the next 6 years.
Yeah, I'd say the big surprise for me was maintaining that 15%, a chase rate as well as 15% against that kind of pitching, and then slugging 474. I just think to be able to slug that much, he's never been a huge EV guy, gets the ball in the air, hits it hard enough. And we saw him just slug, which was really exciting because that really helps the profile as a corner guy. And I'm with you. He's part of the plans this coming season, and he's going to get every opportunity to, try to perform up there. And I think he should make a decent transition just off of the approach alone. And we know the makeup's off the charts.
And I've seen like the Zips projections and all that. I see the projected lineup and all that. And it's factoring in Parker Meadows and it's factoring in Colt Keith. But I just haven't seen Malloy's name yet. And I constantly ask, where is Justin Henry Malloy? Like, I see Bigby's name. Yeah, cool. I agree. But you got to factor Malloy into this too.
No doubt, especially with the ability to kind of move all over a little bit. I think it's a no-brainer to have him in the fold. Not
bad for Joe Jimenez, huh?
No, they did really well there. The Tigers have a nice, fun little core, starting to come together in their own right. Back on my end now. Yep. I got 2 Mets and a Brewer. We'll start with the Brewer, wrap with the 2 Mets. I'm going to go with Tyler Black. And Tyler Black, yes, he was a comp A pick with the Brewers, and I think had a pretty decent season, obviously, in 2022. So it's kind of similar to the Henry Malloy thing where, yeah, he didn't really break out or anything like that, but I just was not expecting Tyler Black to be capable of what he did in 2023, for lack of a better just descriptor. Maintains one of the lower chase rates, in the upper minor leagues, running a chase rate around 19%. But beyond that, Black starts to tap into power. And I know Biloxi's an easier place to hit the ball out, but that's more to the right-handed pull side. It's not as much to the left-handed side of things. And also he maintained some of that power output up at the AAA level as well. But it was just so much fun to watch this guy do his thing, because he swiped upwards of 50 bags, but then taps into that power. I don't know where the heck he's going to play defense long-term. Third base seems like the best option. Maybe he plays first. I don't know. But the bat's really what stood out to me. To walk nearly as much as you strike out while tapping into more power than you ever have, with 18 bombs, 12 triples, 25 doubles. I thought that was what really no one could have said they could expect. I think a lot of people were excited about Black. I think a lot of people thought, okay, yeah, the bat to ball skills are great. The approach is great. The speed is there. But I don't think anybody expected the contact rates to stay well above average, the chase rates remain elite, and the power to tick up to at least average, maybe above, with the way he's been able to tap into it. I mean, Black was a really impressive player, no matter how you look at it, from this past season.
I was just so floored by his comfort level when I was watching him defensively. And, the speed, you can see that on the Baseball Reference page. You can see, the 50 bags or whatever it was. My thing is, when we talk about some of these guys, there are some things that I'll take away that, you may not see in, the video that you watch. And you're watching so much video, and it's good to kind of bounce off of you, because I'll text you like, I think Brooks Lee's a good defender. You're like, really? Let me look more into that. And then it turns out that he's a pretty solid defender. Tyler Black, I said, this guy's super comfortable. You saw him play in Nashville. Wasn't that your takeaway too?
Yeah, well, it's funny because the defense has been the question, right? Where do we stick this guy? He got some looks in center. He got some looks in other spots. I think he's limited in terms of he's not going to be able to make these superstar plays. He's not going to grade out as a fantastic defender. But to your point, it used to look like he was rushed. It used to look like he was uncomfortable trying to kind of be something he's not defensively. Now it's, hey, I'm just going to nail the fundamentals. I'm going to make every play I'm supposed to make. And look, if I can't make that backhand in the hole because my arm is fringy, it is what it is. But I think he's kind of realized, hey, I'm going to make everything that is makeable. And that's all he needs to do with that offensive profile. So I'm with you. He looks far more comfortable than he's looked in the past. And that might be enough to hold it down at third and be a fine option there, with the bat leading the way. What stands out to me to wrap up in AAA, he walked more than he struck out in triple. He slashed 310, 428, 514. And it's funny because you go from Biloxi, which is somewhat of a launch pad, and then you go to Nashville, which is one of the harder environments to hit in minor league baseball. And his slugging percentage was nearly identical. 513 in Biloxi, 514 in Nashville. So that's the thing to me, is this guy found a way to tap into some more power. He's got this big leg kick and controls it so well. It's like Zach Neto-esque with the way that he's able to control that and tap into a similar amount of power, where it's like you wouldn't expect, power is not going to be part of their game, but all of a sudden you're like, oh, he's got 15 homers. He's got 18 homers. And that's going to translate really well to Milwaukee, where all of a sudden a lot more of those fly balls are leaving the yard. I didn't expect 50 bags, 55 bags from Tyler Black. I didn't expect nearly 20 home runs. Maybe I would have expected a high 200s batting average. Would not have expected a OBP over 400 and a slug over 500. Just absolutely surprised me in so many different ways.
I was going to ask you, how many bags were you expecting? Like 20, 25?
25?
64 30? Games last year, still 13.
Yeah.
I guess I would have said 20, right? If he played a full year, 20 to 25, 55 bags.
Yeah. This guy, just everything clicked for him. And that's always fun. Another guy that first round pick. So, you can't call him a breakout, 14th overall pick in 2022, but just somebody that going into this year, I talked about one of the biggest omissions in the midseason update on our top 100 list, Jet Williams, Mets prospect who I always thought he'd be solid, right? Good bat to ball, good athlete, he's probably going to be a high floor, worst case, like John Birdie type is what I always kind of saw there. But then you see what he does this past year. And guess what? Another outrageously patient hitter. Joined Tamar Johnson is like the only 19-year-olds to walk 100 times in a season since what, like 2000 or something like that. So. It was some ridiculous stat like that. But beyond that, this is a 5'7", 5'6" build. And he hit 13 home runs. And they weren't cheap shots. 6 of those came in the Florida State League, which is a graveyard. 7 more come in Brooklyn, which is a straight, it's hurricane force winds half the time coming straight in from the water. Ball doesn't carry at all out of there. It's one of the tougher parks to hit in too. And then even gets a cameo up at AA. And I think the fact that he was able to reach double in itself was a big surprise to me in that age 19 season. But I think just seeing the power, the speed as well, like we knew he could fly, but to see 44 bags, to see the defensive versatility, I don't love him at short. I think he can get by in a pinch. Playing second, playing center, which I actually think could be the home for him long term. And again, walking more than he struck out in high A. Just shocking that he was able to do all of this as a 5'6" guy, to get on base at a well over 400 clip, to slug, the way he slugged. I think this guy can really play.
So the exact number is first guy, he and Tamar Johnson, the first teenagers since 2005 to walk 100 times in a minor league season. And there were, 8 guys, I think, that walked more than 100 times this year in the minor leagues. Justin Henry Malloy, Harry Ford was on that list. Jackson Holliday was on that list. And then you've got Troy Johnston and Tamar Johnson and Jet Williams. Like it's insane what went about this year. Jet, I guess, like the most surprising thing to me with him, yes, clearly the patience, but I don't know if I was expecting 13 homers from
that's what I'm saying. Like in the Florida State League and in Brooklyn.
That's way more surprising than the 45 bags, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you just expect those like little muscle hamsters to be jitterbugs on the base paths when they get there. And if you get there a ton, then you're going to steal a bunch of backs. But 13's a lot for a 19-year-old.
Yeah, and then also the exit velocities, just in general, just to have a 90th of 102.5, like I just wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting a 90th percentile of 102.5. I wasn't expecting exit velocities upwards of 110 miles an hour from that little frame. Like that is what stands out to me. So this guy's got the juice to be an everyday big league player, and that's why the Mets took him in the first round.
Yeah.
Another Mets guy, real quick to wrap up here, is Christian Scott. And Scott is someone that, I mean, you could put him in the breakout bucket because of, where he is now and, where he once was. But this was somebody that was on my radar and I was excited about because he's a South Florida kid, same high school as Jake Eater and Andrew Painter and just over in Calvary Christian and Fort Lauderdale, and a guy that I've definitely kept tabs on and, saw some changes in the delivery, was interested to see what that would look like and see if that could turn into better overall numbers, look good in the fall league. And I'm like, okay, this guy could be an arm. But what he did this past year, Jack, was on a different level. He was pretty dominant relative to anything I think anybody could have expected from him.
He had to be close to the minor league leader in strikeout to walk rate, right? 107 punch outs compared to 12 walks in 88 innings. 107 to 12 has to be there. That's 8.9 strikeouts per walk. He did it in a different role than the last that I checked in on Christian Scott. Last time I watched Christian Scott was as a setup guy or a closer for Florida in 2021.
Yeah.
He was a reliever his entire college career. It wasn't start as reliever, matriculate to the rotation, and then you're drafted as a starting pitcher. It wasn't you were a starter in college and then, you turn into a reliever when you get to pro ball. He did the reversal of what's common. He went from full-time reliever to swingman to full-time starter. And in 19 starts, for that guy to have that command and pump out a 2.5 ERA is fascinating to me. I don't understand those guys. I don't get the rhyme or reason as to why there's immense success going from the bullpen to the rotation. I understand the latter because you're so used to pacing and you can empty the tank, but you see that way more often. So I guess I need to expect the unexpected.
So I think what it really boiled down to was he finds the changeup. And he talked about that a little bit. And I think he found it in the AFL. And I mean, that was a pitch for him in 2022. He was only landing that first strike 47% of the time. So he was fastball slider. That was it. It's fastball slider. And that's a reliever, right? And then now you add that third pitch, and the changeup was arguably more reliable for him than his slider. He landed the changeup for a strike 66% of the time. So almost a 20% jump in strike rate. And it was also nasty. Like the shape totally changed as well, where he started to get 15 inches of horizontal movement on it all of a sudden, whereas he was using sometimes a split grip and just a different kind of changeup before. So it's a nastier changeup that he's throwing for a strike more. Okay, well, that's going to help. And so he starts using that pitch equally to the slider. 22% usage on the changeup, 22% usage on the slider. And so now he has two viable secondaries. And I think that really just helped him attack hitters, be able to kind of sequence a little bit better and just have that third look, because the slider is good. It's not great. The fastball is a plus pitch, and now the changeup is good. So it gives him a plus fastball. I think the changeup might be better now as a 55 grade pitch, and the slider might be more of like a 50-55. So it gave him that third pitch, but now it also turned into his second best pitch. So it was like twofold for him. And that's how you see Christian Scott go from, what was like a low 4s ERA, mid 4s ERA in 2022 between low A and high A, to this year in 2023, 23 innings in high A, 2.28 ERA, then 62 innings in double A, a 2.47 ERA. You talk about the strikeout to walk as well, just filling up the zone with the fastball. And that's the big thing too. Fastball from a 5.5 foot release height. It is just hard to pick up. 73% strike rate on the fastball, 33% in zone whiff, 32% chase rate, 20% swinging strike rate on the fastball. That is a 70 grade heater, actually. Like that, he just purely dominated with a fastball, good extension, low release, gets on you quick, and he was just blowing it by guys. Pair that with the finding of the changeup. Mets have a guy here.
My last question for you. Do you think he makes a start for the New York Mets in 2024?
Yes, I do. Because he's cut from the cloth, and this should have been maybe one of the answers. Damn, who's the next Brian Wu, Bryce Miller in the mailbag? Here. Mm-hmm. Because you got the low release, high carry fastball that just, those are the guys that you could just jolt up there, because those guys can get outs just off the fastball at 65% usage.
Yeah. Do you think he probably doesn't bunny hop like a Budo full-time or a Vassell full-time? Or does
maybe Budo? I think he could jump Budo. Vassell's probably ahead of him in the pecking order.
I would think so.
But
after that, arms, really, I mean, they have good arms, but like there's no
one that's standing out.
That they have.
No. But it's cool, like seeing these like Blade Tidwell now looking like a guy, like Vassell, Scott. These are all guys that were not top flight dudes. They don't have anybody really standing in the way. I think it's going to be kind of an audition between those guys, see who stands out most at the upper levels. I think it'll be fun to see which of the three can separate themselves.
Yep.
That'll do it for this episode. If you can leave a rating, let us know how we're doing. A review would be great. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, check out onjustbaseball.com. Full written breakdown on the arsenal of Shota Imanaga, everything you need to know about him. I'll also link that in the episode description. As always, thank you for listening. Look forward to talking prospects with you on Wednesday.